Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dancing with Damage. I'm Ian, your resident philosopher.
And I'm Abby, your resident author.
And today, we continue our talk about the justice system, and in particular, today, Abby, prisons.
Very fun topic.
Prisons. They are what you make of them. Maybe. So, Abby, in the last episode, which I think if you are following along in the social blueprint, seen here, in situ, as it were, you would be at chapter 40. Mm-hmm. By the way, thank you if you are following along in your own copy of the social blueprint, because it makes us look a lot better because we feel that we wrote what we're trying to say on paper, much better than we do just chatting amongst ourselves. That's kind of like how books are, eh? I mean, it's like maple syrup, you know? You get a big vat of sap from maple trees. It's all watery. And that's like talking, you and me talking. I think we're very sappy.
We have some good points, but there's a lot of other filler floating around that maybe we want to distill down to get to the point.
That's right. So we hope that the social blueprint, is a little bit like if all that sap, which is quite light and sweet, is distilled and boiled and refined into a delicious nectar.
I love maple syrup. It's so good. If you haven't tried it, give yourself a treat and try some.
Very true. So, in the last episode, we were talking about the new justice system we argued for a few decades from the beginning of the Acts, and in a nutshell, whereas the justice system in modern developed countries tends to be quite slow, several months or years from a perceived insult to a resolution, whereas it is quite expensive in terms of all the different parties in the justice systems and parties in legal proceedings and litigation, like jurists, sometimes juries, court officers, clerks, in particular lawyers, quite expensive for people. And whereas it is quite easy, as we have seen and we have heard anecdotally, for dishonest parties to attain an unfair result by twisting the rules of evidence in their favor, or sometimes just having so much litigious paperwork and what they call lawyering, as it were. Whereas those three things exist, it would be far better just to cut away the fat, get something like a functional resonance imaging machine, or fMRI, functional resonance magnetic imaging. You can see why they abbreviated it to fMRI, because people like me were trying to say the whole thing and they're just like, no, clearly this is beyond you. And allow truth detection to be delegated to technology in this way.
I think it would vastly improve society. I saw a news article, I want to say in the CBC, but I stand to be corrected. And it was just the other day. And they were saying that in the past few years, over 100 serious crime cases were essentially thrown out, or the charges were stayed. Not because the person was not super guilty of murder, but because the process of how they obtained information and how the court proceedings played out, the charter rights of the accused were so grossly violated that the courts had no choice but to stay the charges and sort of stop the proceedings and make it so there would never be a finding of guilt. And there was a lot of public outroar. They're like, how could this happen? If you're guilty, you shouldn't be able to get off just because of a technicality. But we as a civilized society feel that people deserve at least a modicum of respect and a certain process to prove whether or not they're guilty. So I think having an fMRI or some kind of more accurate than a human truth-telling plan would really negate the requirements of going through the processes of the court system and having evidence gathered, because it would just be your word. And I think that would make it safer for people, because then you wouldn't have any risk of people who are, committing serious crimes walking away because of a procedural or a technicality issue.
And I was thinking about it. It would be fairly easy, I would argue, Abigail.
Here.
Abigail.
I go by Abby.
As per the stool. Yes, normally it is life with Ian and Abby. But when I'm really pontificating, I will call her Abigail.
It is my name. That's why it's shortened to ABI. My parents are British, and they were like, the short form of your name is your name chopped in half. And I was like, cool. They're like, Abby, ABBY, is a totally separate name. And I was like, cool. And then I come to Canada, and they're like, what? I don't know if it's a British thing or just my parents' thing.
People really like Abby's name. If someone out there is looking for baby names, the amount of times I've heard someone say, Abigail, I love that name, when they meet Abby. You know, it's in sharp contrast to my own name when I say, my name's Ian, and just crickets, right? Or whatever they were going to say anyway. But I've never heard someone be like, that is a great, great name.
I like your name.
I know you do, but you have to agree with me that in the survey of life that you and I have lived together, it is your name that has been roundly praised, and mine which has sat in the cold shadow of yours.
I think there's versions of words or names that have the word Ian in them that are pretty cool, like Killian. What are some other ones?
Well, gee.
Damien, maybe?
Oh, that would be fun. Damien. I wonder if they got that from like Dame Ian. Like originally Ian was maybe a girl's name. It was like, it is Dame Ian.
You're starting to sound like me. This is a problem.
That is not, I don't think, how it got there. But we do like Abby's name. So Abigail, as I was saying, it would be pretty easy to test a truth-telling device in the justice system because many people would say, Ian and Abby, you know, how could a whole society put their faith in the veracity and the reliability of an fMRI or something like that? But wouldn't it be fun to craft an experiment to test how accurate it was? Like you could have a court case where it's a full, let's say, criminal court proceeding. So you could have a judge and lawyers and prosecutors, and the rules of evidence and exhibits would be shown to the judge, and there would be cross-examination of witnesses, and at the end the judge would have to
Give a ruling?
give a ruling. And then you could do the same process
With the same people?
with the same accused person, the same witnesses with the fMRI. The only thing is, it would be a proceeding where there was a secret witness or a piece of evidence, like a videotape or a secret witness who knew the outcome. I'm not explaining this well.
Wouldn't, by law, you have to present all evidence in the trial, though?
No, better idea. Scratch everything I just said. Yes, a better idea. A troupe of actors, okay? I know I said I thought about this. Apparently I hadn't. This is my idea now. A troupe of actors, okay? So let's say, Abby, you and I are the actors. And you kick me. Not right now, but in our thought experiment, right? So you kick me. So you and I both know that you assaulted me, or you kicked me at least, okay? And then we write that down somewhere. Abby did kick me, right? And then we have a trial with the whole 9 yards and all the trimmings and all the fixings of the modern.
Make it sound like dinner.
Like a pizza. You have the pizza. You have the justice pizza. You put on the.
You're making it sound fun, but it's not
You
fun.
put on the judge sauce, and you put on the lawyer, the lawyeroni.
And then the anchovy jury.
And there is an accused crust, and a nice crust. So.
That's pretty good.
Thank you, justice pizza, delicious, delicious. It's a slice.
It's a slice.
It's good, eh? So anyway, so we could go in front of that court, right? Mm-hmm. And you would deny.
Obviously, you have to. If you go to trial, you have to deny you did the thing, or why is there a trial?
Yeah, you would deny kicking me. Mm-hmm. You would give evidence, I would give evidence, see what the judge came up with, and then we'd do it to the machine. Mm-hmm. And then the next day we'd go in and maybe you wouldn't have kicked me that day. You see what I mean? Like the morning of. So on Tuesday, you kicked me, and we see what the judge says if you kicked me or not. On Wednesday,
We have the same trial again?
yeah, well, or it could be different actors, right? Sometimes in the morning they would have done the offense, and sometimes they wouldn't have. Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay, so just do it 10, 20 times and see how many times the judge gets it right and how many times the fMRI gets it right.
Yeah, sometimes it would be an accused person who was falsely accused, where the troupe of actors would say, "She kicked me," and see if the judge gets it right. And sometimes you really would kick me. So the actors would know what happened, and they would have written it down somewhere. And then 100 times it goes in front of the court. And see 100 times with the... Okay, I've made this very complicated. The point is...
That is the scientific process, though. Replication is the key of understanding.
Do you see what I'm saying? I don't know.
I think it's a cool idea. I think that it would be necessary if we were going to use something like an fMRI to show guilt. And I think science should work to try to make a more reliable truth-telling measure, because they've sort of officially debunked lie detector machines. They don't work efficiently enough to be reliable in any sense of the word, so they're not a valid form of evidence in court. So it would be nice to have one, because so many accused people, one of the first 10 sentences out of their mouths usually is, "Let me take a lie detector test. I will prove my innocence." And I think there would be a mass cry out of people who would be like, yeah, I would absolutely love within a few days to have this nonsense over with and save myself the pain, the suffering, the financial, the mental burden, the burden of my friends and family and loved ones and my job, and just have this done.
What we're going to talk about now is prisons. And in the book, we talk about prison farms. Abby.
Indeed.
Now, when we conceptualize a prison farm, I guess let's take a step back. Let's finish up where we ended up in the last episode. And we talked about two people who were in the justice system. One person was accused of assaulting the other with a vase. And I think that person was acquitted in our scenario because they were just trying to hit a fly or something.
A wasp.
A wasp, was it? But so we're going to have to pick a different person going through the justice system. So what can their name be? What can it start with? And I will give them a name.
The letter C, like cat.
A cat, you say? Yes, I will bequeath them a name. I bequeath you, Charlie. Arise.
Arise, Charlie. Commit crimes.
Charlie is with us now. And
This is now a seance.
it is anything we want it to be, sadly for you at home. But thank you for sticking with us as Charlie is come to life. And let's say he is about, I don't know, let's say he's about 30. And let's say he's got a bit of a record. Let's say he is an average criminal behavior typed person, which would mean he is probably a male, which I sort of established with the pronouns. And he is also probably, most likely, on average, a drug user. He is probably, most likely, on average, going to get caught for shoplifting. And let's say that Charlie has been caught for shoplifting 30 times.
That's a lot of times. I feel bad for that store. Or many stores.
Yes, let's say he shoplifted from different stores, just for variety's sake. And he's caught in his 30th time. And at first he denies it. I didn't steal the
Brownies.
brownies from the hardware store.
Someone clearly left them. It wasn't something they sell there.
They're like, Charlie, it was a bake sale, for God's sakes.
For the orphans.
It was a bake sale to raise money for nails and other hardware supplies. That's how the hardware store gets its inventory.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Sales are down, people.
Do not steal from this store. They are struggling already, Charlie. Anyway, Charlie denies it, but lo and behold, witnesses head into the fMRI and the new justice system because we are deep in the acts now. And turns out Charlie took the brownies. So what do we do with Charlie? Well, Charlie is going to go to one of the new prison farms. Now, Abigail, as I don't call you.
Ever.
Tell us about the prison farms. Paint us a picture. Use the brush strokes of your words to give us an idea of what this place might appear as.
No pressure. Okay. So, sort of like the Guardian Centers, which are very rural and very out of the way.
Is this how you paint?
I hope not.
I'm just going to drink this.
It looked like you were conducting.
Oh, yeah.
But poorly.
Yeah, I actually never dipped my brush in any paint, so I guess I was just...
And you're also just making strokes in the same spot, so it's a weird blotch.
I feel like it's... How do you paint?
We'll have to paint sometime and figure it out. But like the Guardian Center, see, criminals are multifaceted. There's many sides to them. And an important thread we will keep weaving and sewing throughout this conversation we have day after day, week after week, is that damage is not your fault. Damage is something that is done to you. It happens because of a lack of love shown, and that allows for hate to be injected into the guardian-child bond. And it's not your parents' fault either. It's gotten to the point where we're so many generations down of damage sort of surfacing that you can't blame anybody alive today. However, it is important to fix it and to show love. So while you can't have people harming others, it's not acceptable in a functional society, you also can't isolate and ostracize the people committing these wrong behaviors, because then they will never be able to reintegrate into society, and it will usually perpetuate crime and make it a long, escalating series in a life of crime. So we sort of want to take the idea of the Guardian Center and try to inject love, because the people committing crime are often the most vulnerable. And that's why it's multifaceted, because there's so many different elements you have to consider. You can't just say you did a bad thing, therefore you're a bad person. You have to say you did a bad thing and you can't do that thing, but we have to help you because clearly you cannot help yourself. So it would be like cottages or a house with many rooms somewhere rural. And there is currently a food crisis internationally, and it's important to have more produce and use arable land for what?
We can make the prisons out of produce. It's genius.
That's not what I said.
I know, but it just sounds nice.
But
rutabagas are especially tough. If you ever tried to break out of a rutabaga house, good luck. Those things are tough as nails. Have you ever tried to make?
I've never tried to eat one. They seem very unappealing to me.
God, they could make Sherman tanks out of these things. Anyway.
I'm sensing a story.
Oh.
The idea would be if we have people who are in the justice system doing productive, meaningful work, it shows them love because they're having a purpose. Mm-hmm. They're gaining skills. They can put it on their resume. It looks much better than I spent 3 years in a jail cell and have no money and no skills, to I spent 3 years cultivating, and maybe there's different opportunities while they're there to work with different professionals to find maybe their path in life. And also, if people are making more produce, it will bring the cost of produce down to make it more attainable for the average person, because right now healthy food is really expensive. All food is expensive. And also, if they're doing something productive for society, then the public perception when they are released from prison will be much better, and it allows more opportunities for them to reconnect with society, make positive social bonds, show love, be shown love, reduce that damage, stop the life of crime. Solved.
So that is quite the collage my wife has painted for us.
As you show.
let me just draw a little stick diagram. It would be a sort of semi-autonomous, large structure in a sort of semi-rural or rural area, capable of agriculture. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I'm getting the idea.
It's multifaceted.
So, Abby is very passionate, and she launches forward like a heat-seeking missile. But I think we should start with what it looks like. So that's what it looks like. And the reason it might be away from build-up urban areas is twofold. Number one, it's much easier to get real estate out away from cities, mm-hmm. right? You can imagine getting a large complex capable of agriculture and all the fencing and buildings required built in a city would be quite prohibitively expensive, but in the country, less so. And number two, this insulates somewhat the inmates from the negative influences of the city. Not only the sound and the noise and the stress and the pollution, so some fresh air and sunlight, that always does us good. But also, it is quite common for visitors coming to jails to sort of affect the internal jail economy, which we don't really want. We don't really have to get into that, but it is good to isolate jails away from our large urban population. So, Charlie is sentenced, and he heads off to the prison farm, which now we know is in a remote sort of farm enclosed space. Now, in the Guardian Centers, you mentioned, Abby, we have very excellent staff, medical experts, nutritional experts, vocational experts, expert educators, the very cream of the crop. Because as we know, the more difficult a situation is, the higher the level of skills required to address it.
Yes.
For example, if you had a very technical meal you were making, for example, like some sort of very fancy, what's a fancy baked good?
Souffles are kind of hard. Making chocolate really well is a skill.
Okay. I've seen on TV, some people take a bunch of chocolate and they'll make a shape that you wouldn't expect chocolate to be in, like a swan or a grand piano, right?
I love those videos.
I'm obsessed with them. I don't truly understand the point of them because I feel that the point of chocolate is to eat it. And if you then make something first before you eat it, it's unclear what that middle step offers to the ultimate goal.
I think we all love chocolate and we all love art. And then it sort of stops you from being able to eat the chocolate so you can enjoy the chocolate, but it doesn't tempt you to eat it because it's art. So it's like a healthy way to deal with your chocolate obsession.
By comparison, you can imagine if a contractor who had to build like a cement wall took the cement and before the wall sort of made a fanciful swan out of it and strew it all about. And then, oh, now it's time to make the wall with it. Let's move it into the wall shape. And it's like, well, that's good. Anyway, they make whole videos out of this. My point is, you would always need the best master chocolatiers to do that, and not the person who just maybe got out of
maybe a 1-week intro to chocolate making course, or maybe a 1-day. Sometimes they have 1-day courses in bakeries to sort of get your feet wet and learn about what chocolate is. So maybe if someone took a 1-day seminar on the intro to chocolate making, they wouldn't be equipped to make this chocolate swan.
And so for the same reason, in the prison farms, just like the Guardian Centers, the state would want the very best hands at the wheel of these most difficult cases, both behaviorally and in terms of symptomology. Anyway, so Charlie shows up. It's his first day. And let's look at what a day could look like for Charlie. It could have some time with mental health counselors. Mm-hmm. Because we talked about this, Charlie is a bit of an addict, sadly. And that is very common amongst the population which engages in criminal behavior. I would say the vast majority of criminal behavior in this time in developed countries does stem from either untreated mental health issues, such as bipolar, schizophrenia, things like that, or substance use issues such as alcoholism and substance use, like drugs, street drugs, meth, crack, fentanyl, all these things, opioids. So Charlie needs that dealt with because, in fact, even though Charlie has a large system of damage in his subconscious, which, by the way, is very true. If you look at the backgrounds of basically anybody who has been convicted of criminal behavior, you will find a great deal of trauma in the basement of their subconscious, causing a lot of that guilt that we talk about, causing that self-sabotaging behavior. But they're also usually afflicted with drug use or mental health issues. So Abby, would you say it's important to deal with those sort of major mental health issues, which is inclusive of substance abuse disorder, as a part of the treatment?
Yeah, you have to deal with those things before you can touch the underlying damage. As an example, if you had a fire in a steel room with no windows and just a giant steel door, okay?
I'm with you.
Feel me? You have to open the door before you can put out the fire, because if you just throw water at the steel door, it's not going to do anything. So addiction and mental health issues are like a steel door to the fire that is damaged inside your mind. So you have to be able to get through the different barriers in order to get to the root of the issue and to make positive strides forward.
Very true. Although it makes you wonder what room you're describing. It has no windows and it was all steel with a steel door?
Yes.
Is this a meat locker that's on fire?
It might be. I don't know.
And if so, is this a better way to cook your steaks? No. Because you're not supposed to cook from frozen. Anyways, so that's right. We should backpedal a bit because some people, and this is very common, Abby, that when we talk about crime and the commission of crime, especially violent crime and crimes that really hurt people, which do crop up often, there is a popular reflex to say, throw away the key, condemn that person permanently, they must suffer for what they've done. And it's certainly an understandable reflex. If someone does wrong to us, there is an instinct for vengeance and so eye for an eye, sort of a code of Hammurabi, as it were. But we have argued, and I think most people who have looked at the issue carefully argue, that it is actually not very efficient to attack the person who commits the offense, and it is better, in fact, to try and rehabilitate that individual. There's two reasons for that. One, it is better in ethics to do that, because as someone once said, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. And so it always is better to reduce suffering where possible. And the person who commits criminal activity is almost always suffering more than the person they commit it to, which is interesting. That old adage, hurt people, so to say. And number two, in developed society, because of the safety nets that exist with the medical system, justice system, welfare system, and all these systems, it is actually not financially sustainable to simply lock someone up and throw away the key, because you can either keep them in custody their whole lives, which can cost in Canada between $300 and $600 a night.
Expensive.
Very expensive. Those resources are desperately needed elsewhere. And number two, if they're not kept under lock and key all the time, which is prohibitively expensive, then without being rehabilitated, the person is out costing society more and causing more suffering as their life progresses. So it is in fact not correct to leave the issues that are underlying the criminal behavior unaddressed. And one thing that my dad actually always said, I really liked his analogy on this point. He sort of talked about how damage causing pain to others and causing pain to ourselves, which is what damage is. It's like an ice cube in someone. And no matter how hard you try, you can yell at the ice cube, you can throw it out in the cold, you can blow a fan on it, do whatever you want, but will that ever melt the ice cube?
I think throwing it might smash it, but it won't melt it.
No, this is a very dense ice cube.
I think that will help to maintain the freezing. Much like outside, we have about 20 feet of snow and it just keeps falling, despite the fact it's almost April.
No. So my dad always said you have to get out a heater. And if you get a heater and put it on the ice cube, then it can melt. And so another way of thinking about it too is like if a person has a cancer. You see, a cancer can arise in an organ and it can manifest and it can spread all around the body. But when a patient has a cancer, we don't take them to the hospital and punch the patient repeatedly over and over again. It's not done. Instead, what the medical system tries to do is attack the cancer itself and see the patient as someone who needs help. And there's different methods to get the cancer to go into remission. And in the same way, we have to think about people who engage in criminal activity. And by sending them to the prison farms that we advocate for in the social blueprint, it's like sending them to the oncologist who can direct their, I was going to say laser beams, but I'm now fairly confident as I say these words that this is not what oncologists do. No. They fire their beams.
We're now the X-Men.
Beams of truth. No, that makes no sense. But it's like the oncologist for the damage and person with criminal antecedents. So let's talk about Charlie's day-to-day schedule, Abby. He gets there, and as you pointed out, he should be going, let's say from 11 to 12, why is he getting up so late? Charlie, get up.
Well, usually you farm first thing in the morning, so it would make sense if maybe he took a break from farming from 11 to 12 to meet with somebody.
Charlie, get up. From 9 to, well, first of all, he's got to get a nice meal. So there'd be a nice plate of food for him at the food center in the jail.
Usually you start farming at like 6 a.m.
Charlie.
That's an average day for a farmer.
Don't eat any of that. You got to go right to the work fields. Abby is your warden.
No, he'd just have to eat before that. I'm just saying he'd have to early risers and all that.
Okay, Charlie, I beget. It's very early. Have some delicious eggs. Go out into the fields. Because, as I noted earlier, it is very expensive to keep prisoners in a traditional cell with 4 walls and a lock. As Abby points out, why not have them create a product that society needs by farming from, when do you start? 6?
7 a.m.
7 a.m. 7.
I hate you.
And I don't even get that joke.
We don't understand it.
But I know it's a joke. It's from 6, let's say, till 11, okay? So he's going to farm. And then at 11 o'clock, it's time for him to see the therapist. And probably treat his blisters. And then maybe another meal. And then wouldn't it be good if Charlie was able to access some sort of trade program? Some of the people from the apprenticeship program, some mentors are coming through. Some of them are teaching carpentry skills or pipe fitting or welding or whatever the trade is that the person is interested in might be available to Charlie.
That's safe to learn based on their crimes. And also this kind of accessibility to training is currently available in Canadian prisons. It's just that nobody uses it. But the money is spent. The money is spent supplying the resources to run these programs. It's equally painful that the money is spent, yet no one is using them. So we're just sort of throwing money into the sea every year to help nobody.
Yeah, Abby's right. There are certain inmates in the federal detention system in Canada who could have access to education, but it would not be the norm. But in the prison farms, it would be very normal. So in any event, Abby's right too about classification. This currently exists already in jail systems, but it would be very important when we talk about prison farms to consider what is appropriate for the inmate population. You see, if a person were very, very high risk and so unstable that they couldn't be trusted with a farm implement, then they wouldn't be farming, you see. There would obviously still have to be, well, I say obviously. I shouldn't say obviously. There would still have to be, traditional jail cell type accommodations.
I don't know why, but the way you said that made me picture, it's not funny. Just more scarecrows start popping up in the fields. It's just the other prisoners. And then there's just this one guy with a hatchet who's a little unhinged.
He's the scarecrow?
No, he's killing people, then making them scarecrows. Because he was farming when he shouldn't be farming.
What is happening? Where were the guards?
I don't know, but when you said some people couldn't be trusted with
that
farming
sounds like
implements.
the plot of a horror movie.
I know.
Okay. You're not in charge of classification, Warden Abby.
No.
Anyway, so, boy, it's hard to bounce back from that, but we will. Because even Abby's horror plot cannot stop me. So, yes, some inmates would have to probably be contained in true blue segregation cells the way inmates are currently in Canada and other developed countries. But I would argue that would be the vast minority. Because you see, if you're an inmate and you have the option of being on good behavior and being out and doing something with your hands and being kept busy, well, time passes much faster when you're busy. And it passes very slowly if you're contained in a cell just kind of watching the cinder blocks.
Yeah, there's no clocks, I guess.
Pretty boring. So inmates would be quite interested in being able to be classified as low enough risk to be working and doing things like that. And then if someone were really, really low risk, which can often happen too, you have people in the custody system who can be trusted to an extent. Perhaps they could even be doing important work for communities outside of the prison walls. You could be doing things like logging or mining, or I don't know, something important that would be suitable for those inmates. Because again, we want the prison system to become less of a drain on social resources and a drain on the souls of the people inside them, and a net benefit to society and a net benefit to the people who are incarcerated, which is possible. It's just that society's become so damaged, it has forgotten or is feigning ignorance of that ability.
Yeah. Right now, people in jails and prisons have the right to do things like work in the kitchen. And if you talk to somebody who's gained that privilege, it seems like they've turned a corner. They're happier, they're more full of life, they're excited, they take their responsibility seriously. The other inmates have a respect for them, that they're doing something. So a job that a lot of teenagers grumble about having to participate in, all of a sudden, if you are suffering from damage, it gives you a purpose. So imagine if we had that on a much grander scale and every inmate had the opportunity to sort of flex their, contributing to society muscles.
That's well said, Abby. Yes, there is sort of a parallel to be drawn already in modern justice systems. But let's talk about Charlie. So he's on good medication. He has been free of substances for the requisite amount of time. He's been putting in some hard labor to pay society back. He's been learning a skill, a trade, let's say. And so he has really been shown love by society, because instead of being thrown into a corner like so much dust, instead Charlie has been given activities and structure that is in his best interest. And as we know, when society makes an effort to do something in the best interest of an individual, that is a form of love. And now his damage has been reduced. And I'd like to wrap up our chat today, Abby, by talking to you about torture. Yes, you hatcheted me with that scary scarecrow thing, and now I'm going to tell you about torture.
It was like a Monty Python skit, They're joking and they're having the prison farms, and all of a sudden all these scarecrows pop up. I don't know. I just pictured it as John Cleese leading the charge, and I don't know why.
Well, hold on. Just let me cut you off there. Is one inmate murdering other inmates and turning their bodies into scarecrows?
Yeah, they're putting them on post. I pictured it as like a Monty Python skit.
Oh, I really hoped I was misinterpreting that.
No, because you said they can't be trusted with farming implements. And then I pictured like a John Cleese Monty Python skit where they're like just killing and just hiding them from the guard because they're just as scarecrows. There's a lot of scarecrows in this field today, Bob.
It reminds me of an important facet we would argue for in the prison farms that is reminiscent of the Guardian centers we talked about earlier, that it would be important to use technology to monitor and have the ability for the public to be able to observe what was going on in these prison farms. Sort of like, how in zoos, there's like the otter cam.
Yeah.
And so anyone can go online and look at what the otter is doing in its swimming pool that day, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so without breaching any privacy rights, because obviously in Guardian centers and prison farms, there's areas of privacy that would need to be maintained. But certainly the general areas, perhaps the common areas, could be surveyed in an electronic way so that the public could be sure there was no abuses going on, either by the staff or by, as Abby so eloquently put it, the John Cleese hatchet man. Anyway, I wanted to talk about torture, so let's focus less on murder and talk more about torture.
Aren't you glad you're here?
Hoi. So, water torture. Water torture is a activity where one victim is perhaps immobilized on a table or some nice chaise lounge.
Are you sure this isn't a Monty Python skit?
No. And a big bucket of water, perhaps, is over top of their head, for example, and a little hole is made in the bucket so that at regular intervals, a droplet, blink, blink, falls on the forehead of the immobilized watery victim. And it's water torture because even though it's not necessarily painful at first, it's over hours and days, that dripping water in the same place continuously is quite
painful,
quite torturous. And the reason I bring that up is because it's a good way to visualize damage, the system of guilt in the subconscious, which causes someone to have a miserable life and be self-sabotaging and slash away bonds with other people by driving them away. It's the amount of damage in the subconscious system is a bit like the amount of water in the water torture
bucket.
And so for some people, it's like a small little water balloon. And those are very lucky people. And there's some people in the justice system that we've seen, Abby, that can go in once, learn their lesson, never go back again. And then there are some people that go in continuously and constantly.
Over 50, 70 years, yeah.
Just for their whole lives almost. And those are people who have a self-destructive system like a swimming pool above their head. And so one way to think about the state showing love to those people and to anybody, but in particular those who have criminal behavior patterns, is like if the sun started shining on that prisoner in the water torture chamber, drying up some or all of that water so that that person doesn't have to suffer anymore.
Yeah, and we don't want people committing crimes in society. We don't want to have to worry every time we go outside that someone will steal from us or break into our house or steal our car. You know, we want a society that is relatively safe and crime is not the norm. And recently, crime has become more of a norm in many places around the world. So it would be nice to make it so instead of persecuting criminals and making them more robust and more serious criminals and doing more serious crime, we could have a system where we take those who are suffering and make it so there aren't as many criminals.
Yes, indeed. I think perhaps in a later episode, Abby will talk more about this, but I think that's sort of the cliff notes of the prison farms of chapter 40. And I think in the next episode, we're going to talk about immigration. And also I will talk about penguins.
Really?
Yes. As counterweight to some of the macabre gallows humor we have been touting today. Yes, I think that's what we'll do. So thank you for tuning in. Join us next time, won't you?
Have a great day.